As we go live on Flavor Footy tonight, the one and only Stuart Holgren joins us. What's up, Stu?
Theoretically, he joins us.
I would say we see him, but that's not even really true. He'll join us. He's here in spirit, if nothing else.
I like the idea of both Stu and Santi just popping in at some point.
Right. Yeah. So people tuning into the stream or on YouTube are like, oh man, it looks like a full house, except for there's only 2 of the 4 people there. So we'll give our friends in soccer a few more moments before we get started in earnest. And let everybody else kind of join. Let the Instagram folks join, let the YouTubers join. If you're joining from X, even better. As we just kind of chill here.
What's up, Justin?
There he is.
How you doing?
I'm doing good, Stu. How are you?
Mic issues. I'm doing well. I missed the ice cream machine. But man, is it not weird to have a day game at City Park? Oh, Santi.
He's coming back.
I was thinking about that. I do kind of like I don't think I've like all day games, but like a day game sprinkled in here and there. I do enjoy it. And like the sunlight coming through City Park makes for some nice like game day pictures afterwards. Give you a little bit different environment.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen so many kids at even like City 2 games. Like it was absolutely packed to the and a little biased because I had my own kid there. But there are kids everywhere at that Austin game. It was awesome.
That's the one thing I'm upset about is that we don't have more afternoon games or more, whether it's Saturday or Sunday. I think that's such a missed opportunity in general in MLS and their scheduling.
Yeah.
From like a selfish standpoint, I would love to go to bed before like 2 a.m.
Right.
I bet. So it's been a while, boys, since we've had 4 of us. I think what I'm going to do is probably in a lot of our segments, I'll toss it to 1 or 2 of you, maybe, depending on how we're doing on time. And then if you have something like, I'm watching the camera over here for the first time in weeks, but because I usually let Phil handle like everything going on here. And if he's giving me like a warning or something, I'll like, oh, well, he's doing something. But if you've got something really important you want to say on a topic, let me know and I will pull you in. I'll make sure to pull you in. Otherwise, I'll just randomly pick people to go to for each specific topic.
Sounds good.
Except for Santi, because he just left. like in the middle of me talking, he's like, I'll be right back.
That's the benefit of not having a camera that works is
we just don't know.
I don't know where I am at any point in time. Actually, I just have a dog on my feet right now because she's scared of all this thunder.
Yeah, that'll do it.
It's actually like put my daughter to sleep, which was nice. I don't know if you can hear the quiet around this place, but
I'm sure we don't appreciate it like you do right now. All right, Santi, you with us?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If you guys see anything that you like in the chat, feel free to bring it in too. I'll let you guys all get in on that too, because I have the chat like hidden right now on a window.
All right.
Y'all ready?
Let's do it.
Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. We are sponsored, as always, for the 2024 season by Noble Ice Vineyards. We thank them so much for being a part of Flyover Footy in covering St. Louis City this year. My name is Matt Baker, joined by multiple friends in soccer this week. We have a huge show as we're previewing Sporting KC. City is heading to Kansas for the first time this season, so we thought it appropriate to have a full crew, 4 people here for you to break it all down. I'm joined by Justin Horniker, Santiago Beltran, and Stuart Holtgren. Let's start, Justin, with you. How are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, Matt. Doing just fine. Excited to talk. It's been a big couple of weeks, especially like just news MLS wide, and then of course, big weekend coming up.
Big weekend. Santi, how you doing?
Doing great. Excited about the weekend. First installment of this three-game series between St. Louis and Sporting KC, and obviously still thinking about last year. So hopefully we'll get a good result this week.
At least 3 games, right? You never know what might happen. So
Yeah,
we
that's
round
true.
out our crew with Stu. Stu, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's stories about the amazing away game to Nebraska Furniture Mart and how their experiences are.
The mecca of soccer in Kansas lives in a furniture mall parking lot. It can't get any more appropriate soccer capital wise than that. And to start it off, we're going to get into how some of our players are doing. But guys, before we get into St. Louis and Kansas City, I do want to give a special shout out to a St. Louis City Academy member, Emiliano Chavez, defender for City's U17 Academy team, has been called up to the U.S. Youth National Team camp in West Palm Beach, Florida, that runs from April 14th to April 19th. Chavez is the 6th Academy player to receive a call up after Caden Glover, Miguel Perez, Tyson Pierce, Fritz Vollmer, and Aaron Hurd, and the 8th overall City player called into a national team camp, of course, with AZ and Indy in the national team Olympic camps. Fantastic for this young man, and we just appreciate that so much. The next in line in a long storied history of St. Louis City already, players who are jumping into this. So exciting times for St. Louis. But now we jump into what has been kind of the story of the week leading into Sporting KC. It's the player availabilities. And Justin, I want to start with you after I give the overall player availabilities because I want you to go into briefly the big story of the week. Going into Sporting KC, we are going to be without the services of Edu Leuven, Josh Yarrow, Jabulu Blom, and Sam Adeniran. Multiple reasons play into all of these. Injuries plague Edu Leuven, Josh Yarrow, and Jabulu Blom. But we have some big, not so breaking at this point news on Sam Adeniran that has been permeating through the St. Louis fan base. So, Justin, do you want to give us the info and insight on what's going on?
Yeah, I guess the big thing is that Adeniran has been training separately away from the team all week. This comes on the heels of kind of like a surprise exclusion from the lineup. You know, something happened between Friday's press conference and Sunday's lineup that was it something between Sam Adeniran and his teammates and his coach, and that will have to be addressed. But for now, he is training away from the team and is not in the lineup until future notice, we were told.
And Bradley Carnell said a lot without saying a lot, I think. So there's a series of events, right, Santi, that we've kind of been seeing over the past couple of weeks. You could date it back to, I remember seeing it training, I think it was almost 2 weeks ago at this point. Bradley Carnell was seen talking to the side of the field with Sam Adeniran. Then Sam Adeniran, like Justin said, was left off the matchday roster against Austin. And Bradley Carnell's post-game comments after that saying the focus is on the players who are here and emptying the tank for each other. Fast forward to Tuesday, Sam wasn't at training. Carnell said at that point, right now we're focusing on guys who bring a certain standard, intensity, work effort in training, and those players will get rewarded. Sam, up until further notice, will be training on his own. And then that all brings it to Thursday, where Carnell's only comment when asked if Sam was out for Sporting is until further notice. Santi, what do you make of the Sam Adeniran situation? And I will say, for all of our listeners on the Big 550 KTRS, tune into our podcast because we are going to go deeper into this Sam Adeniran conversation than we really have the time to in our preview portion, the first 45 of our pod that airs on the Big 550. Santi, what do you make of this?
Yeah, so before going into Adeniran, I just want to answer a question Bilbo Swaggins was asking about Emiliano Chavez, if he is a fullback or a center back. He's a fullback.
Perfect. Love that was asked in our chat of our live stream. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
And then Adeniran, yeah, it's a difficult situation. Obviously, we don't have much information, but I have a feeling that yeah, it's one of those things. Maybe could be multiple things. Maybe he's not happy with his playing time, or 3 4 weeks ago there were rumors about a possible transfer that City rejected an offer. So could be that too. But as you said, like Carnell, without saying much, is saying something, and it'll be interesting how this develops in the next few weeks. If it's one of those things that they just talk it out and he comes back and put his head down and starts training and gaining minutes again, or if maybe it doesn't get better, and then maybe we won't see him for a while. We'll see.
Stu, you've got the perspective here of the only one of us who at one point this week wasn't in a press room or on the training field. So, with the outside looking in view, hearing everything that's been going on online, hearing the conversation, what's your gut reaction and what's your thoughts of what you've seen so far?
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that Sam is on the way out. I was seeing online tonight how the chosen one, Jose Mourinho, actually, he used that as a motivational tool to Schweinsteiger when he was at United. Now, obviously, that's a big ego there, but it's a tool that's used sometimes by managers to motivate players.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as Santi said, Sam has reason to maybe be frustrated. He wants to go back to Europe. I think that's pretty natural, or I assume he wants to go back to Europe. I can't put words in his mouth. And losing out on that opportunity, I'm sure, stung a bit. And I'm sure the club wants him to move on their terms if something came up this summer again. He was rumored last year to be connected to transfers. Scuttlebutt is ranging in the normal ways of people are passionate and everything's everywhere. And I don't think we know until after things settle down.
And we'll have much more on Sam Adeniran, discussing him and Klaus in our wind down. But there are other players, like I mentioned, who are going to be impacted in their loss against SKC. Edu Leuven, first and foremost among them. And he's another player who, in a different context this week, has been very, very much an ambiguous thing going on in the fan base. So Carnell has not really said a whole lot other than giving him space. So he wasn't in the match day lineup against Austin. We knew he was carrying hamstring injury into that match. So it wasn't surprising that he was left off, but it was trending positively. Like, he had showed back up to training last week as a neutral. Carnell said he could have gone if they really needed him to. He was at City Park, but then he was missing from training entirely on Tuesday of this week. And Carnell said Edu Leuven, quote, has a couple of things going on, and we're trying to give him the space needed and also progress his body the right way. Edu, for me, the first important thing in my pillar of beliefs is the person. He has all the time and space he needs. And that answer came on the heels of informing us for the first time that Sam was training on his own. So you can immediately see the juxtaposition in how both players are being treated. But then on Thursday, Bradley Carnell had probably his clearest message yet of Edu Leuven, ending really the speculation of what might be going on by saying that Leuven was tending to a family medical emergency. And Carnell said, quote, Edu gave me the grace to tell you all what has been going on. We just ask for privacy, and we've told him to take all the time he needs. So unfortunate for St. Louis City that in addition to, like Sam, like we said, Leuven won't be available. We're missing Yarrow and Blom still, as they're on week 2 of their 2 to 4 and 4 week timeline for their own hamstring injuries. It's the hamstring time of year, apparently. So, Justin, another week without Edu Leuven, how does this impact St. Louis City?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Edu is the driver on this team under normal circumstances. But like on the flip side, you can look at it as they've been without Edu for 4 weeks now. Mm-hmm. So, kind of starting to figure things out, life without him. When he's ready to come back, it's going to be kind of a different outlook than it was before he left. Now that we know that there are some players that can step into those shoes when needed. Obviously, you want to have Edu Leuven in every minute possible, but I think it's really encouraging that like the team will come out and have these conversations. Like, this is what's going on. Like, he needs space. I've been through with family members. I know just because they're athletes, like you need that space. And sometimes you can't get in the right headspace to compete. And a guy like Leuven, I think all he wants to do is compete. So like giving him the space away from the team is probably more beneficial for him than having him there and kind of going through the motions.
I read this as the team putting into practice what they preach from a mental health perspective. So without knowing the severity and everything, and we're not going to speculate first and foremost on what the family emergency might be, the severity of it. That's
Doesn't
not
matter.
it's not our
Doesn't
place.
matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What you said though, Justin, is what matters. Is that the team is not asking him to fight through whatever's going on off the field. They're allowing him the time and space to focus on that, because they don't want a player fully distracted to be on the field. They want to give that player the headspace and respect the person first and foremost. And that is, it's commendable from Carnell to take a person that, you said it, Justin, is so integral to this team. The fan base has known for now 2 years just how important Leuven is as a driver to this offense and on the defensive side as well. So for the most important player, you could argue, to be given this space speaks volumes to how this team practices their application of their mental health. So, Santi, we have seen, like Justin said, some positives in the past few weeks. There's been a lot of messaging from Carnell. He mentioned it on Thursday about their ability on the ball, what they've learned in the past few weeks. Santi, speak to the importance right now of Thomas Ostrak, who we heard from Thursday, but what his role has been and how St. Louis has really been able to find a groove without Eddie Leuven.
Yeah, Ostrak is one of those players that has stepped up in lieu of the absence of Leuven. And yeah, he's playing in a new position. I had a chance to talk to him earlier this week, and he said, "Yeah, it's new, and I had a lot of things to learn and things to get used to." He mentioned that when he was younger, he played a little bit of it, but obviously, a few years later is something new. But the way I see it, every game he looks more comfortable in that position, and now he's trying to stay back instead of going forward and getting in somebody's space. He's kind of learning that timing, and it's great to see players like him as stepping up. And you could see that the last game he started the play that generated the goal with a beautiful pass, and he's embracing it. He's saying, "Yeah, like I feel better this year," and yeah, it's playing a it's not my natural position, but I'm learning it and I'm embracing it, and I'm giving everything I can for the team. So it's one of those things. You see that next man up mentality, and Carnell has said it multiple times. Yeah, this is a system that if a player is not able to play, we can plug in somebody, and they should be able to execute. And we're seeing it with Thomas Ostrak, and I'm happy for him because last year was tough for him, and I think there were a lot of expectations. He was probably expecting a lot of himself too, and that didn't materialize, and he ended up not getting as many minutes. And this year he's getting minutes, and he's happy, and he's delivering. So it's great to see that Thomas Ostrak that a lot of people expected to be last year, even though it is in a different position.
Yeah, Thomas Ostrak is in his third legitimate season with St. Louis after coming in 2022. He's only 24 years old, so he's still young. He's still trying to prove himself, and he came on such a high wage bill that I think there was an expectation to a certain level. And now it's really nice that he's taking the opportunity given to him at a different position than what he may have been brought in to initially play, and really show the versatility and show the commitment and ability to help St. Louis on the ball. Pivoting to Sporting KC and seeing how they're coming in fitness-wise into this match, they seem to be rounding back into shape. This week, we heard that Remy Walter is maybe the only one questionable for Saturday's match, per Peter Vermees. He's participating in training on Thursday to see whether he can go. He had an injury that he suffered. It was taken out against Inter Miami, but they are also seeming to be getting some players back, namely Johnny Russell, who was injured and came on late against Inter Miami. And so from a Sporting KC perspective, they seem like they're coming into this a little healthier. And so let's pivot to look at the overall St. Louis City, Sporting Kansas City landscape and how we come into this match. Because now that we're in year 2 of the Darbecue, of the Capital Classico, whatever you want to call this, we have for a much different perspective than we did last year. We have matches under our belt. We have Sporting KC with a 3-2 overall series victory, if you're counting playoff matches. And I see this upcoming match this weekend as markedly different, both in personnel and also in just how each team is approaching this from a standings perspective than I did last year. Stu, can you take things away from last year, or how do you view this first match? Is it something fresh? Are there old wounds that players are looking to close? And Tomas Ostrak mentioned he wants to get revenge. So what are we supposed to see coming into this? Is it truly revenge off the end of last season, or is it a fresh start, so to speak?
A little bit of both, I think. I mean, obviously, it's a new season, fresh start. There's going to be new faces on each team. Hopefully, a guy like Totland is educated on what this means. But having Johnny Russell come back, obviously, he's the captain and heart and soul of that SKC squad. And he's a guy that you absolutely hate his guts when he's not on your team. But man, I'm sure we'd love him on St. Louis. Yeah, I have a mentality of a goldfish to some extent because they really beat our pants off in the playoffs last year, and you don't want to be too hung up on that. But at the same time, that's good, locker room whiteboard material to motivate them, and hopefully our guys come out angry and are really motivated to hang one up on SKC.
Yeah, so let's look at how the teams are coming into this. St. Louis City comes into this match sitting 8th in the West after climbing 3 spots from last week. They have a 2-1-5 record, 2 wins, 1 loss, 5 draws, 11 points, a +1 goal differential, and their away record this year is 0-1-2. So still looking for that first win away from City Park. Their form the last 3 MLS games, they lost 3-1 to RSL, they drew FC Dallas 0-0, and they defeated Austin FC 1-0 last week. Sporting KC is coming into this just underneath St. Louis in the standings. They sit 9th in the West on a 2-2-4 record with 10 points and a +1 goal differential, though they have scored more and allowed more. 14 goals scored, 13 goals allowed on a 1-2-2 record at home. So not the greatest record at home, but their form the last 3 games has been up and down, to say the least. So they defeated Toronto FC 3-1 on the road before coming back home in their last 2 matches to draw Portland 3-3. And last week they lost, of course, the match of the week, Inter Miami at Arrowhead 3-2 in front of a crowd of 72,610. The big story for me, and Justin, I want your take on how Sporting KC has been in their last few games. Big story for me is the inability for SKC to hold a lead. They gave up 3 straight goals to Portland. They were up against Inter Miami and they fell back. They've had injury concerns, sure. Similar to St. Louis, they were missing some big players. Johnny Russell, who returned last week from a hamstring injury. Remy Walter, he left against Miami with an ankle injury. Memo Rodriguez missed Miami with a thigh injury. So is this really a case of Miami or Sporting KC is better as long as they have healthy players, or is there something overall going on in these last few games?
I think it's tough because you look at what happened to them last year and like form early in the season versus later in the season when they had their DPs healthy was very different. But this doesn't feel like quite the same thing. Alan Plato has not looked great to start the season, and like Johnny Russell is the life force of that team. So sometimes it's hard to like really judge what that team is when he's not in it.
Yeah.
And like who knows where his fitness is at right now. But what their form has told you is that they allow goals, and that's not something that Johnny Russell necessarily fixes. I think for their last 5 home games, they dropped points from leading position. So it's not that they aren't scoring, they aren't finding ways forward, but defensively their structure has just been, there have just been times where it's kind of non-existent or just completely unorganized. So if you look at like how St. Louis played last 2 weeks, back-to-back clean sheets versus how SKC are coming into this game, while form-wise it's kind of similar, one is looking a lot more structured than the other. So who knows? It's also a rivalry game where we saw last year sometimes form just gets thrown right out the window.
Yeah, you do wonder just how much of this rivalry aspect is going to impact it, because the matches they played last year, they were all over the board as far as how St. Louis played, how the goals came. You know, you had buckets of goals being scored in 3 of the 5 matches. But if you were looking into the form coming into this, like you said, Justin, I think you do have to give the nod to how St. Louis has been playing both efficiently on the defensive side, but also just doing what it takes to just inch out points here and there and not giving up points from winning positions. That's huge. So I would tend to give the nod and the momentum to St. Louis with their 2 straight games of excellent chance creation. Cardinal has been pretty glowing in a lot of his overall comments in these past couple of games, working hard on both sides of the ball, getting a goal, finally being rewarded for it. Multiple other good opportunities being created on top of the 2 clean sheets, despite the fact that they've been without arguably 2 or 3 of their top 11 players in Leuven, Blom, and Salmon Dennerin. So things I think in good shape for St. Louis, but Santi, Sporting KC coming into this, it's still early in the season, and we had a chance to talk to Mike Kuhn from the KC Soccer Journal, who was trying to set the tone for us coming into this, not just this match, but this season, because it's a different SKC team in expectations based on how they finished the season last year, and they're not having the abysmal start to the season that they did last year. But Mike said that the way the 2023 season ended for SKC, expectations were to come in and perform at that level immediately, to be in a position to compete for a top 3 or 4 in the Western Conference and make a run for the playoffs. But there's not really a whole lot of differences. That's the biggest thing for me, is this SKC team that we saw last year is by and large the same team that we're going to see on Saturday. The only notable difference is the departure of designated player Gadi Kinda, the Israeli who returned to Israel in the offseason after his contract expired. And so SKC goes from having 2 DP level attacking midfielders in Gadi Kinda and Eric Tommy to just 1. They do have Memo Rodriguez, who's been solid in depth and had his own injury concerns, but with the same team by and large that St. Louis played last year, is there some familiarity, Santi, that we can use to St. Louis's advantage here?
Yeah, definitely. Besides Kinda, another missing piece is Logan and Bende, their lead back, which St. Louis should remember very well.
That's right.
He scored 2 goals in the playoffs. He's still injured.
Yeah, I
He
think he was the
actually,
other player that was missing from training. That's right. And so he's probably going to be questionable at best for this weekend.
well, he's still recovering from an injury. I believe it was an ACL or
Yeah.
MCL.
Yeah,
He
during that
actually,
playoff game in SKC.
yeah,
Yeah.
during that playoff game, and then he missed the playoffs. So yeah, he's still out. But yeah, there is a lot of familiarity, and the one thing that Sporting KC did well last year during the playoffs was, and that will maybe come into play this week too. They changed their style a little bit, and they basically gave the ball to St. Louis and
Mhm.
basically said, "Okay, here's the ball, beat me." St. Louis has improved in that regard this year. It's interesting because you still don't see it in the stats, but for moments of games, I have seen the team progressing the ball, being more patient, avoiding the long ball. So it'll be interesting to see if Sporting KC is loyal to their style, and they'll build methodically as they usually do, or they just say, "Hey, St. Louis, here's the ball. Let's see what you can do with it." But yeah, the fact that it's a similar team, and that also is suffering from some injuries. Johnny Russell not being in his best form. He has missed 3 games this year, and like last week, he only played a few minutes.
Mhm.
Um, it's um it's good for St. Louis that it is a similar team, but at the same time, like Gary Kinda is not there anymore, but Eric Tommy has stepped up and taken some of that responsibility, and he comes to this match in good form. He scored 2 goals last week. But one thing about Kansas City, one thing I wanted to mention, they you mentioned that they have allowed a lot of goals. They have also scored a good amount of goals. They come to this game scoring at least 2 goals in the last 5 games, and they have never scored 2 or more goals in 6 games since 1996. And the other thing that caught my attention when we talk about them giving up leads, I saw this stat on the notes from Sporting KC. Uh, Through the 64 minute of their games, they have outscored opponents 13-3. After the 65th minute, they have been outscored 10-1. And
Whew.
yeah, and we were talking about depth and the fact that that Peter Vermees doesn't use his subs. He doesn't make the five subs. He doesn't use the five subs. Sometimes he makes two or three. So I don't know if it is one of those things that on the second half, maybe fitness wise, they are not there, and the lack of depth is is hunting them, and they are giving up points and giving up goals. So maybe that's something that City could take advantage of on the second half, and City always uses the five subs, fresh legs, and take advantage of that this weekend.
Yeah, Santi, I mean, you just took the segue I was building up right out of the words right out of my mouth on that one, because the next thing I was going to mention was Mike had called out from KC just how little Vermees likes to sub, and that being a factor in this. It can't go overlooked. And I was looking back into the matches that we played against them last year, and I think more so than any other team that they played, they made a significant amount of their subs against St. Louis. The first match, they subbed 5 players. The second match, they subbed 3. The third match, 4. The fourth match, they had 2 subs, and then I think 3 subs in that last game. 4 subs in the last game. So for a team who in their last 2 games has only made 2 subs each against Portland, they made one of their subs after 2 goals allowed, and then in against Miami, they had 1 second half attacking sub. So we're talking not necessarily about a team that is using their reinforcements to come in for their attacking players. And at the same time, last year, they did need to do that. So they had to go to their bench. The stat you gave about how they control the game and control the scoreline before 63 minutes is incredible. And if there's one single facet that I think you can point to as isolated to this game where St. Louis has the absolute opportunity, it is to make the difference in the second half. It is to outrun and outpace SKC if they stick to their style, to run them off the field. So knowing that they haven't been making subs in these past few games, and the types of subs, so one attacking sub in each of their last 2 games, and how last year they had been subbing quite a bit more. Do you think, what's your gut reaction? Is Vermees going to go, Santi, to his bench a little bit more, just almost out of necessity with this?
Yeah, I think, and the fact that I had not realized about the 5 games last year that he used more subs. Yeah, definitely. I think he's gonna need to go to his bench. The question is just based on the last couple of games, is it one of those things that maybe he doesn't trust the guys that are on the bench? He doesn't think that they will be able to deliver what the team needs, or is more of a how the games are developing. He didn't think he needed them, but yeah, if he wants to match up City physically, I think he's gonna have to resort to his bench. The question is, does he have the guys that could go head to head with St. Louis, or is he gonna stick to his starters?
So let's look at those head-to-head battles for a second, because Justin, I want your let's give a couple of those key battles that you're looking for, because there's quite a few of them with Logan Dembe out, and you have Jake Davis as such a capable right back. Where do you see some of the biggest battles taking place? Is it truly on the wings, maybe where Anthony Marcanic versus Jake Davis? Is it a midfield battle of Eric Tommy against Chris Durkin? Where do you and who would have the advantage in some of these battles?
I think the big battle for me are those out wide, especially at fullback, where like Thomas Totland, who is a player that City just didn't have anything close to last season. So like, what can he do against a Tim Leibel that like has been okay, has been fine, but he's not. I don't think he's as defensively capable as Totland or as offensively capable. That's kind of the one I think as City try to attack out wide that they'll want to rely on. Then, of course, I know you have the battle down the middle kind of highlighted here as well. Seeing what happens up front, and if Durkin and Ostrak can kind of keep together before it gets to the center backs, like that battle in the midfield can be very interesting, especially if it gets later in the game and St. Louis brings subs on, like we were talking about earlier, and SKC don't. It's going to be a lot of running going on, and I think that is potentially where St. Louis can find a way forward. Because if you look at last year's games too. Like that's especially the last game at Children's Mercy Park. That's a game where St. Louis have to win. They have to score goals. And SKC kind of knew that. They said, here's the ball. Then it turned into Melia and Berkey kicking the ball back and forth to each other for like 75 minutes. So it's going to be much different this time around, I have a feeling. Those little chess matches are interesting. I do think that Thomas Hotline makes a big difference compared to what we saw last year.
And the ability for St. Louis to actually possess the ball a little more intentionally, using Ostrak and Durkin to play off that in the midfield, that offers a different look. Having Sporting come into this with a lot of the similar players and similar styles, looking to as long as they have health, is going to be fascinating to me. And what City can throw at SKC differently, because I tried to get Carnell to speak a little bit about if he wants to dictate the flow of play, if he's looking to say, all right, we know we're a counterattacking team. Those are our basic principles. We're going to create those opportunities for ourselves, or if he's going to be a little more content and willing to play on the ball. And of course, he did not bite to that. So that for me is another key to watch, is how willing is St. Louis going to be to one of the few games that they had last year where SKC was, like you were saying earlier, just giving them the ball. It was the first playoff game where St. Louis had 57% possession. So that is going to be something to watch.
And I think that's kind of like the catalyst between why they play different this year too, was those games where they had to have possession last year, the big one being that Sporting Kansas City game, and they couldn't do anything with it. So like you see it when you watch the game. Obviously it hasn't necessarily played out in results yet, but they are much stronger on the ball. I will also point out, Colton Cook down in the chat says Russell and Marcanic is a fun battle, and that's one that, if Johnny Russell is healthy, is going to be rough for Anthony. I have a feeling.
You wonder who's going to help him, because I can't see Johnny Russell being left on an island to Anthony Marcanic out there. As well as he's been performing the past few games, I have nightmares and PTSD of Joseph Paintsil just torching Anthony Marcanic. And other than that moment, Marcanic has had a pretty good season so far. So it's it's not surprising at this point in the season. Marcanic has started 3 straight games, if memory serves right, guys. And after Dewar had started, Marcanic has taken that left back spot. And I think it's going to be an interesting test, assuming that Johnny Russell is completely healthy. Stu, expectations on both sides as far as, is this any sort of a must-win game? We talked to Mike out in Kansas City, and knowing that they've been losing from winning positions lately, Sporting KC this will be their 3rd home match in a row. So this is a big stretch for them, in which they've failed to pick up all 3 points in any match so far at home in this stretch. This is their last chance until they go back on the road. So losing leads, dropping points, having St. Louis come into town. On the other side of it, St. Louis is looking for their first away win. They're looking for revenge. Which side is this a bigger game for?
Well, for the home team, it's a bigger side. Sporting KC, I mean, this is going to be the 2nd straight home game that they'll have more away fans than home fans, and I'm sure that's going to burn them a little bit. But it's not a must-win really for either team, in my opinion. At this point, it's so early in the season still. We saw last year how Sporting really started off horribly for the first 12 matches of the season before they turned it around. But I do think the pressure is more on Sporting KC after they've dropped points in 6 of their 8 matches, 5 of their 8 matches, something like that.
Yeah.
It's been pretty brutal for them. So I would say they have more pressure, being the home team, dropping those points. St. Louis obviously were banged up, coming back. But going back to your Russell versus Marcanic, I do wonder if Durkin's going to kind of shadow him in the midfield.
Durkin has shown a propensity to get into some scuffles. That's for sure. He's one of those hard-nosed players. That's a good shout out. And he's been, as that center defensive mid, number 6, he's been helping out of the back line at times when one or more of the fullbacks pop up. So not unlike Jabulu Blom had been doing, but Durkin's been pretty adept at that. You're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. We're presented by Noble Ice Vineyards for the 2024 season. Thank you so much for joining us. We have just a little bit, as we are barreling towards the end of our St. Louis City pregame show on the Big 550 KTRS. quick shout out that there is so much that we will not have gotten to that we usually do. A lot of our nitty gritty stats, a lot of looking in between the lines in how these teams shake out. Tune into our podcast for more. Our wind down will have all of that and so much more on this battle, Sam Adeniran, and a little bit more on some MLS rule changes that we're going to get to in a moment. But before we look at the rule changes, guys, let's look at the formations and lineups that we expect and get your predictions ready because we're going to go around the horn, lightning round style for predicted St. Louis City starting 11. On the SKC side, what you need to be looking for is that Peter Vermes with Johnny Russell in the lineup is probably going to go back to a 4-3-3. They attack down the wings. He's made some changes this year based on some of those injuries, the form, the players. We've seen a 4-2-3-1 with Alan Pulido dropping into the 10 to play an attacking and underneath Willie Agata. But against Miami, especially without Johnny Russell. With Johnny Russell returning, that could go back to a 4-3-3. Seeing Remy Walter, Memo Rodriguez, their health, that's going to be a factor in how some of this midfield will shake out for Sporting KC. Even though we're told that when Vermes changes formations, the style of play has been similar so far to this season. So when they're in possession, they're going to be methodical. They're going to try to find the open opportunity between the lines, passing it around a whole lot, not going to be anywhere near as direct as St. Louis City is. Looking at who they're going to roll out, Mike says, depending on their health, things could change. From prior experience, he expects Johnny Russell to start. This will allow Eric Tommy to drop into the midfield. And then it becomes a question of, does Vermes want to go with his 4-2-3-1 or back to the 4-3-3? The projected SKC lineup looks like Tim Melia in net, Tim Leopold on the left side, Andrew Fontas, Danny Rosero, and Jake Davis round out the back line with Nemeja Rodoha. I'm butchering this name. I know I am. Eric Tommy, Memo Rodriguez above him. That's their midfield three. Daniel Shallowy, Alan Pulido, and Johnny Russell make up the attacking three. No stranger to St. Louis City. So, guys, looking at St. Louis, this is how SKC will likely run into us. Looking at St. Louis, who wants to start us off?
I can go.
There it is. Guest of honor, Justin.
I'm racking my brain to see like where you make the changes from last week. Like I'm almost tempted to say you just roll back the same starting 11 because it worked out so well. And I really liked what Rasmus Alm brought, not just from grabbing the assist, but also from what he was able to do defensively as they kind of set up their shape. So like, I almost say you just roll it back with Marcanic on the left. And then the big question is if Joachim Nielsen is ready to start, but I think like it seems like that's probably more of a bench play. So like I think you just run it back. Marcanic, Hebert, Parker, Totland, Oshak, Durkin, Pompeo on the left, Vaslev in the middle, and then Alm on the right, and then Klaus up top. But I could easily be talked into one of those two wingers being slot for Vaslev and AZ up top.
I would tend to agree. Santi, before I get to mine, what do you have?
Easy, same lineup. Winning, you don't change a winning team. Things went well last week. And one thing I've been meaning to mention, but I didn't find the opportunity to say it. I think if Celio starts on that left wing, he's going to be key, containing Jake Davis, and he may draw back a little bit to help against Johnny Russell. So whoever plays at left wing is going to have a key role Saturday.
Ooh, good shout out. Stu, are you going to make it 3 for 3 on rolling it back?
I'm going to go a little bit different, and just for the sake of changing things up, Santi, I'm actually going to say that Celio coming off the bench, considering how SKC is vulnerable late, so start Thor up on that left side in lieu of Celio. But otherwise, same lineup, but that depends on if Nielsen's ready to go or not.
That one's a little spicy because Thor is our only other presumed striker. I like that a lot too. But the concept, I mean, that plays exactly into what we've been analyzing. The speed that you can use to your advantage in that second part of the back half of the second half, essentially. It's like Santi to your stat earlier. Love that shout out. I'm going to go with running it back, except for I'll add in, I think Nielsen might start. We didn't touch on him earlier, actually, because I don't think he was so in training on Thursday, Joachim Nielsen was training by himself off to the side for the media portion that we saw, but it was a very limited portion. We didn't see very much of anything. And while the team was doing soccer tennis, while they were stretching and doing calisthenics, Nielsen was on the side training field doing some agility work with the ball. So you saw him come into the game. You know that it's a broken rib that he was dealing with. So as long as the fitness is there, the rib doesn't really seem to be bothering him as much anymore. It's the fitness for me. So I would say as much as a 50-50 shot that Nilsson might have, the caveat being going from 5 minutes up to 45 plus, that's a pretty big jump. So he's going to have to really pass some fitness tests to be in that conversation. Other than that, yeah, run it back again. If you're as proud as you were that Carnell was with how you played against Austin, you're not going to change a whole lot. And you still have the speed of Nuke V. Thorson, AZ Jackson, and a host of others on your bench that you could bring into the second half. I think that provides with St. Louis a lot. Though watch the sub list for St. Louis on Saturday too, because their numbers are questionable on if they're going to have enough to even field a team 18 to 20 to travel. So you never know if you're going to see Akil Watts see some minutes. Maybe you have opportunities for Nicholas Dewar to find his way in the game. Could be a lot, but the attacking end is going to be some interesting questions. Before we get out of here, guys, we have to touch on the thing that actually could be one of the biggest impacts this weekend, and it has nothing to do with any single player. MLS is finally implementing their new rule changes that they were announced earlier in the season prior to the referee lockout. We're going to go deep into this a little bit more in our wind down at the second half of our podcast, but I'll list them out, and I'm going to go around the horn on which you guys think is the most impactful. The off-field treatment rule is, to me, the biggest one. If a player with a suspected injury remains on the ground for more than 15 seconds, the referee will stop play, wave the medical crew onto the field, and when safe, the player will be removed from the field and remain off for at least 2 minutes for further evaluation. Exceptions to this are going to be instances of potential head injury, goalkeeper injury, serious medical events, and fouls resulting in yellow or red cards. Second on the list, timed substitution rule. A substituted player must exit the field within 10 seconds. Failure to exit the field at any point within 10 seconds will cause the incoming player to wait for a 60-second holding period before entering. The team will then be down a player for this time. Exceptions to this one will be injury and goalkeeper subs. And finally, a fan experience rule. In-stadium VAR announcements will begin this weekend as well. VAR decisions will now be explained and announced by the referees to fans in the stadium and broadcast viewers at home. Justin Horniker, which one do you find most interesting?
I think from a strictly in stadium idea, I like that they have to read VAR out loud when they come up with decisions. So there's so many times when you're up there like trying to figure out what they're looking at. So from like a selfish standpoint, I enjoy that, but I also like the time substitution rule. I think that like especially late in game when that kind of is the area where you try to time waste is take your time getting off the pitch. And I think that is going to be helpful.
Santi, what about you?
To me, the most impactful will be the injury one. Not having somebody on the field for 2 minutes could make a difference, and it will also help with time wasting. Somebody was saying, oh, Colton Cook was saying, hopefully the new rules help us stop the slowing of play, or as I call it, DC United tactics.
Oh, that's a perfect shout out. Stu, which one are you looking forward to the most?
Well, I'm wondering how they're going to, I know they trialed this in MLS Next Pro, but what's the discretion on head injuries again on this? Because if you're down for 15 seconds, going off the field for 2 minutes, I remember MLS Next Pro had a rule for that, but I'm not recalling it right now. I think the subbed players 10 seconds to leave. It's a very doable rule. I think that'll make an impact on change of play. However, it's gonna. I'm interested to see how teams respond to. I mean, obviously, they're gonna find a way to delay play for 60 seconds until their guy can come back on.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes down to referee discretion on those two. So the stadium VAR announcements might be the most impactful just because of it'll impact how fans enjoy the game.
All right, and last but not least, guys, score predictions for this week. I'll start it off saying 2-1 St. Louis. Stu, let's go reverse order. What do you got?
I'm going to go bold and 4-1 St. Louis.
Whoa, monster game.
Wow.
Santi.
I'm going with the draw, 2-2.
Okay, Justin.
I want to say 3-2 St. Louis.
Love it.
Oh,
Perfect.
Wow.
All right, guys.
A lot of goals.
we got to get out of here. If you're listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS, good luck listening to this City game. It's going to be a fun one. And tune into our podcast when you get a chance for more information, more analysis, and more information on these MLS on-field rule changes. Thank you so much for joining us on Flyover Footy. For Santi, Stu, Justin, I'm Matt Baker, and we'll talk to you later. All right, fellas, we're out, and we'll be right back for the wind down. All right, chat, everybody who's listening to us on YouTube or X, Instagram. I don't know if we're live on Facebook this week, but if you have any questions, drop it in the chat and we will absolutely get to them. Because I only had to leave out about half of my my stats from the show notes. Including my stat of the night. Oh man, that got cut from the first part of the pod. How devastating to me. Stu, are you there?
Yeah, I'll be here just for a couple minutes.
Okay.
I figured I had to go on a rant about some news that came out tonight.
I was gonna say, do you
Finally.
wanna kick us off on the wind down with anything?
Sure. Yeah, there's one signing that happened
Yep.
officially tonight that I'll wait for everyone to come back, and then I'll mosey on out.
Oh, that's gonna be making the wind down opener. So you will be I'll kick it over to you right away. Chris, that's an affirmative. 100%. Where my captain goes, I go.
Hey guys.
All right, we're gonna get going on the wind down. Stu has the big news of the evening to start us off with, so I'll bring us in.
Well, it was kind of a
No, hang on, no. You don't get to do that. You got to wait for me to actually start the wind down.
all right. Let's
Wow.
go. Let's go. Off the top.
You're gonna ruin this for editing for me later. Okay. Welcome in, everyone, to the wind down. There's a lot more to think about when you're doing this on your own as opposed to having Phil do the heavy lifting.
That was important. I'm glad we got that in.
Thank you. Yeah, now that you're a regular on here, Justin, it has to be a regular occurrence. I have to stick to our guns here. All right, Stu, you're going to lead us off with, as we're recording this on Thursday night, probably one of the biggest stories, if you're a longtime St. Louis soccer fan, that we will have, we heard finally get released. We'd heard about it for quite a while, and now it's official. What do you got?
So they've been kind of teasing us with some of their signings for a while, but Etar, I believe, FC out of Belleville, Illinois. They play at Althoff High School in the NPSL. They finally wrapped up their last two announced signings today, and they were Chris Duval, former MLS player and City 2 assistant, and Sam Fink, former St. Louis FC captain.
Here.
So yeah, that's Sam signing with them was a kind of an open secret for a while. So glad that finally became public. So I believe they kick off their season on May 4th, but I'm not 100% sure.
And Sam, who now infamously has not gotten a haircut since he played for St. Louis FC, apparently.
Oh man, yeah, it is long. He went from, remember his buzz cut that he had in like 2018?
I didn't even recognize him. That is Wild.
I didn't realize it was his picture at first, admittedly. So, Stu, NPSL, ATAR FC, this is a club that will play over the summer in not unlike, I want to say, the Gallagher U23s of a few years ago. So this is the summer league, right, where they'll have a handful of home games in Belleville.
Yeah, so they'll have a handful of home games, and they're also going to be playing against their Missouri counterpart, which is Club Atletico St. Louis. Ricky Garza owns that club, and some Club Atletico veterans are actually going to be featuring on the Setar side. Xavier Brown being one of them, and Anthony Brown, Xavier never played for SLU, but Anthony was a SLU alumni, St. Louis men's. I think he played in 2016, but he was one of the first St. Louis FC Academy grads, so that was kind of fun. So just look for that rivalry. It's going to be a fun local rivalry. It's now this is going to be their third season of playing each other.
And if their calendar on their website is correct, they have mostly Friday and Saturday games in May and June. I think they have 1 or 2 in July, but June's the big month.
Yeah, and you'll see these guys wearing, the ATAR guys wear their gear around City Park, and they're, I believe, season ticket holders. So you'll see them around, and they're nice. Just walk up to them, say hi. And they are rolling out new kits I just saw, so you'll be able to get a personalized Sam Fink number 4 kit hopefully sometime soon. I'm waiting to get mine. So
did you just break the news that he's going to wear number 4, or is this speculation?
That's speculation, but he's worn number
no, but he has to wear number
most
4
of the time. Yeah. He wore 3 his first 2 seasons in STLFC, and then he wore 4 afterwards with OKC onward.
Okay, that's exciting.
So Chris Geffar on the chat just mentioned that the game against Club Atletico is on June 21st at Altov. It's a Friday.
Perfect. All right. Fantastic. Cannot wait for that. That's going to add to the fantastic soccer that's occurring in St. Louis. And it's so tremendous to be able to go see Sam Fink again. That's something that I never really thought we'd have the opportunity to see again. So super excited about that. Guys, you tell me where to go. Do you want to go back to SKC St. Louis for some stats? Do you want to go a little bit more about the on-field rules, or do you want to talk Sam Klaus? Justin, what do you want to do?
Oh man, this is putting a lot on me. Let's talk.
You're the guest.
Let's talk Sam and Klaus, then we can segue that into stats. I think that's a clean roll in my head.
For those watching on YouTube, X, or Instagram, I think I have a little treat in how we can talk about this because my incredible tech skills are going to be at play here.
Whew.
Yeah, I pulled up
fancy graphs.
I pulled up charts. When Phil turns hosting gig over to me, I pull out charts.
Whoa.
It's not quite PowerPoint. So if you're listening to this on a podcast, it's not quite PowerPoint. It is.
This is good data viz.
It's side by side from FBref. A breakdown of on FBref they allow you to compare to other players of similar positions and see where your skill set lies. And so if you're watching on stream, you might want to blow this up to full screen. But it really shows you what Klaus brings to the table versus what Sam Adeniran brings to the table. And you can see the visuals show in a lot of areas that defending, Klaus far and away excels over Sam. You have specific areas of passing that Klaus is far more beneficial, far more adept at than Sam. Sam is a lot better at his progressive carries and his successful take-ons. On the attacking side, Klaus with his shots, his total shots is mirroring what Sam does. They're about even on how many shots they do. But the big thing for me is shot creating actions. And this plays into the passes that Klaus has that Sam just does not have. Passes attempted is night and day. Shot creating action is night and day. So while we see Sam as a finisher, those are the things that jump out to me is the differences in defending, in facilitating. Justin, when you see this, what are some of the biggest things that jump out at you? Not in which one's better necessarily, although we probably will get into which one is better for the St. Louis system, but just what's most notable for you here?
Yeah, I think it just confirms what we kind of know about their different play styles. Like Adeniran is a player who's very direct. He wants to get in behind, but when he is running off the shoulder of a defender, especially late in game, he's gonna blow right past him.
Yep.
And that's where you see the progressive carries come on, successful ons really pile up. And then Klaus is just a little better at doing those things in between the lines. And like I think for what Bradley Carnell wants out of his striker, the stuff that Klaus does away from the play is kind of why he is always ticked up as the starter over Adeniran. That being said, like you need someone who can finish the plays, but especially when Edo Levin isn't around, like Adeniran isn't going to create his own opportunities. You need somebody to deliver him those balls, and it kind of shows when he doesn't have it.
Yeah, Santi, looking at this, there are some obvious differences in possession numbers, passing, carrying. Uh, do you view either of these players in the St. Louis City system as one makes more sense to start and one makes more sense to sub from what we're seeing in this club this year so far?
I think it depends on the opponent. Each of them has different strengths that could be used to approach different opponents. When we were talking about Sporting KC and Jake Davis, the first thing that came to mind was how Adeniran had some success against him last year. So that's an example where he could be useful, and maybe Klaus is not that same type of player like Adeniran, um, like a more progressive, progressive carries and better on take on. So different players, but I think having and it's difficult because and we're seeing it right now. Maybe that's part of the problem when you have two players that are so different, and sometimes you can only use one. Then the other one may get frustrated. But having that versatility, that variety in your team is also great. It's just that you cannot keep everybody happy.
So we've seen a few times where Klaus and Sam have played together. Um, Justin, what is your gut reaction thinking through both of these players together on the field at the same time? Do the underlying numbers here reflect a well-oiled two striker system, or from what we see, not just in these two specific players, but how everybody plays underneath of them? Do they complement each other well enough on the field that they would usurp somebody who's underneath of them? Like instead of going with three attacking midfielders, you would obviously borrow one to pull up higher in Sam or Klaus. Or do the way that their play styles break out, one makes more sense with the underneath players?
I've kind of thought about this a lot actually, in that when they're playing together, they should be complementary. When you look at their play style, like we just talked about, Enneran likes to get in behind, Klaus likes to come back into the midfield and receive the ball and dribble at you. And you would think that those two would play off each other a little better than oftentimes they end up doing. And I think, Matt, to your point, if they would maybe clear out that central midfielder to where like Klaus can almost be that shadow striker to come back into that space, that maybe works a little bit better. You look at those numbers, they should be complementary, but I don't know if they necessarily are in practice.
There's a question in our live stream chat. Is the takeaway that if we are forced to possess, Klaus is the statistically better option, while Sam is the better option for counter pressing quick breaks? I think if you boil it down, that is definitely a benefit to having Klaus, while you've seen Sam noticeably better in some of the transition runs on the outside, where I guess it just depends on it. Santi's point may be the answer to this is the opponent and what they're showing and what they're giving, right? Because so the goals that Sam has scored earlier this year, that run from Salio is the one that sticks out in my mind in 2024. 2023 had multiple of these as well, where he's such a good player to take on defenders 1v1 in space. He carries the ball so well, and he can get in behind while possessing the ball. He's so adept with his speed and his ability to control the ball that, yeah, if you're in transition and you're needing your top line striker to be that spearhead of the transition, and you're trying to play through balls to him to where they would keep the ball and still need to get themselves in position to score, that is definitely something the Sam has more of a strength at. But the question to me is, how many times is St. Louis trying to play that where they're, because if you're having your striker do that, to me by nature, you're not getting the ball into the attacking half, the attacking third with volume and with your attacking midfielders. So you're having Salio do the work. You're having an underneath attacking mid or Tomas Ostrak type player do the work to send the ball, and then it's only getting to Sam maybe in the attacking third, right at the cusp. And so he's the one being asked to carry and finish versus every other type of buildup that St. Louis has, working through the wings, delivering crosses, having your striker come back to the ball. Sam offers a ton, and he's so skilled with the ball at his feet and what he can do. But I don't want to say it's one dimensional, because that's definitely giving an undeserving slight to Sam that I don't intend. But I just think that in the style that we have, Klaus does offer more versatility to the different ways that we look to progress the ball. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, because I think on the defensive side too, which you can't really discount because that is
Yes.
one of their main ball progressors as well, as being able to like kind of force the ball into certain areas of the pitch and then win it back in a good position. And what Klaus does away from the ball and like in those defensive situations, I think is much more to what Carnell's looking for. And to that point of starting over, coming in as sub, especially as you're feeling out the game in those opening minutes, I think Klaus does a lot to kind of jam up those opening channels.
And I guess the question against SKC is a moot point at this stage in the game, because we know Sam's not going to be
Right.
playing. So the question just becomes more carrying on the conversation as the fan base is having it, because the the way that this has played itself out is there has been a lot of, half of the questions with Sam in general have been not people who want Sam to be in the lineup. It's not a concern of what he's been doing in training. It's the performance on the field. And so what is, without going too deep, because I don't really want to do this type of analysis, but are we seeing a fair shake as far as it is fair of the club to do what they need to do given what they are seeing holistically? Or should we as fans be upset because what happens on the field during a game trumps everything? And Sam producing in limited action should in fact tell us he needs to play more, and he should never be benched because he's performing so well. Is that ever a real consideration for you guys? Or is this, from the limited knowledge that we know, does this seem to be a fair shake in what the club is trying to build culturally?
I think like if you only look as far as what has happened in Columbus with Cucho and Wilfred Nancy,
Yeah.
and he was suspended for team rules for 2 weeks. He comes back and like everything is kind of learned from that experience. But your big takeaway there is that you have to hold even your star players to that same standard you're holding everyone else to. So if it is something having to do with what Adeniran is doing away from games, whether that's in training, whether that's in team activities, what have you, like there is a standard that they hold everyone to, and you can't make exceptions.
And Santi, seeing how Cucho has come back now, does this in fact offer a potential path forward for Klaus, or do we think that the situation is more different than what we know going on with Cucho?
Yeah, without knowing exactly what's going on and what the issue is, and as you know, Bradley Carnell hasn't said much, but I think the club is handling it well, especially when they're a new club trying to build a culture with players where ego like it's out the door, and the team is trying to play as a unit, and everybody uh, contributes. I think it's fine. I think it's a good learning lesson for everybody, and hopefully the team and Sam will get past this. Everybody will learn from it, and we will see more from Sam. But the fact that it's a new club and it's trying to build something, and some specific values, I think you have to hold everybody accountable. No matter how good you are on the field and how many goals you contribute when you are on the field. So I agree with the way it is being handled.
The last thing I want to talk about on this topic is the way it's being handled, because I haven't seen many of it, but I was in fact asked in my own house about this. So,
Wow.
so in addition to some other people, the only other comment that I've seen that does have merit to me, I'm not going to discount it at all, is, do we feel that the limited information that Bradley Carnell has shared does a detriment to Sam as far as potentially throwing him under the bus in a public setting? So let me reread the quotes that Carnell had, because I was trying to be prescriptive and give just the facts of what he said. But there is a subsection of the fan base who has heard the facts as presented by Carnell and said, well, he's clearly throwing Sam under the bus for a lack of training, a lack of pushing himself and pushing others in training. So the quotes that Carnell had said, for refreshing, is, after Austin, when Sam was left off the roster, the focus is on the players who were here and emptying the tank for each other. The quote on Tuesday was, right now we're focusing on guys who bring a certain standard, intensity, work effort, and training, and those players will get rewarded. Sam, up until further notice, will be training on his own. And then the comment on Thursday was just, he's out until further notice. Is there anything to that, Justin, that you see of Carnell has said too much in what he's been saying?
No, I think like it toes that nice line. Well, not nice, but it toes
Right.
that line of like saying something. Because if you don't say anything, then like speculation, it's out of
Yeah.
control. But you have to
Yep.
say something that kind of paints the picture of what's happening. And he's not coming out and saying like Sam Adeniran is a piece of trash. He's not
Mhm.
like sticking up for his teammates or whatever. He's saying that, we have a standard here and we have to hold everyone to that standard, essentially, is what he's saying. So, like, I think it's pretty fair. And especially for someone like Carnell who harps on principles all the time, it's very much in line with like how you would expect him to talk about a situation like this.
Yeah, that was one of my gut reactions too. In addition to the sheer fact that the media is going to ask, whether it's us or Tom Timmerman or whoever, the question is going to be asked because Sam's going to continue to be not seen at training. So
Hmm.
your point, Justin, is where I'm coming from. The opposite of saying anything is, Sam's not here, and I don't have anything further to comment right now. That would lead to wild speculation that wouldn't go against the speculation that we're seeing now. So Carnell's quotes about a standard, intensity, work effort, and training, those players getting rewarded,
Mhm.
like that's pretty specific in what we could read into things. The alternative is still reading into that, but also going much further. Did he get into fights with players? Was this is Sam upset about not being sold to
Mhm.
Norway?
Yeah, I think it cuts down that speculation as well because he's not
Yeah.
saying like, Sam isn't here or whatever. He's, clearly it
Hmm.
has to do something with like effort, I guess is a good way to put it. But, you know, I think it does do him a little bit of a favor in that it's not like he's holding out because he wants to leave or something like that. And
Hmm.
like I think it tracks with the team likes Sam likes the team.
Hmm.
Like it's just kind of something that they have to address and move past. And like if you want to become a better player, you have to be challenged sometimes.
Well said. Santi, any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, the only thing I'm gonna say is when I hear those quotes and read them multiple times, yeah, the one conclusion I will have is that for some reason right now he's not 100% committed, and they're just trying to find ways to get past that. But the fact that he is here and he's training, it's just a good sign. But it will we don't know how long this situation is going to last. But yeah, just not having Sam long term, if the team will need to find a solution for that. And maybe as we have said, Torison will see more minutes, and maybe for the next few weeks let things between Sam and the team get fixed, and then we'll be back to normal.
Yeah, so let's pivot back to Sporting KC to wrap this up, because it's only appropriate that we give a little extra talk in the wind down to this specific matchup that is going to kick off the at least 3 series rivalry in 2024. And before we actually do that, guys, thoughts on the name of the rivalry? Any preferences to Darbecue, soccer, Capital Classico, or anything else?
So Darbecue is already the name of the Houston Dash KC Current rivalry. So in my mind, it came first. So
I saw you mention that on social media.
We
So
didn't decide that last year. So you lost it. You lost the naming rights. You didn't fight hard enough for the trademark. So cease and desist, please. I think I don't have a name, but I do like something having to do with like Big Muddy.
Big
I've seen that. I've seen that be thrown around a little bit. I enjoy that. I don't know. I'm not here to tell people what to call things.
Ooh, so we're infringing on, you said, the Current and the Dash?
Yeah, I think specifically the Dash like to call it that. But yes, it's the name for, if you want to call that a derby between.
And it's for the similar reason, right? Like barbecue between
Houston, Texas, barbecue. Yeah, of course.
Okay, and they had this last year? Because you're the Current expert. I'm excited to have a Current expert here.
I think, unofficially, because if you look at the trajectory of KC being in, KC being out, KC coming back. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's been kind of been run with the team socials. So
okay. Good to know. And yeah, I think Big Muddy, whatever you call it, Big Muddy Derby, it follows the motif of some other teams like the Hudson River Derby, those kinds of things. That would work. Santi, I know you kind of coined the Capital Classico.
I also like the Capital Classic. I think that is.
Yeah, I like the Capital Classico, but I don't think that's gonna be it, just because there is a trademark. My opinion is that Sporting KC could make more money if they release the trademark and just work with City to give it a name. If it is Capital Classico, I think there will be a lot of merchandise related to that will be sold, but I don't think they see it that way, and they just maybe after 2026 conveniently they will drop the trademark and then let the name go, and we will see changes, but who knows.
Interesting that you would mention dropping a trademark.
Whoa, where are we going?
I'll just say that, and I'll leave that breadcrumb that if you were a true club who wanted to build a rivalry on a certain topic, dropping a trademark that you may or may not have once had could be seen as a goodwill gesture. I'll leave it at that and let the internet do its sleuthing on what they come up with.
Matt, you haven't told us what you would call.
Right.
I've grown on the Darbecue, but I honestly didn't. I didn't know the history of the Current and the Dash.
I don't mean to ruin people's fun.
No, it's okay. The one thing I will not stand for it being called is the Heartland Derby.
Oh my god, I was trying to remember that name so bad. Yeah, that's a no.
And it's not trademarked, but it just appeared on SKC socials this time last year in May before the first game, randomly just calling it the Heartland Derby. And I have heard from good sources that was not a signed off on Derby name from the other side. So anything but that.
Yeah, I think it speaks to because KC is much more the Heartland versus St. Louis. I don't really consider, even though sometimes it's colloquial for the Midwest in general, but yeah, it only works for one city, really.
Agreed. There's a question in our live stream chat, 1 Mega Ohm, who asks, Big Muddy, isn't that in Illinois? And yes, there is a river in Illinois its name is Big Muddy, but also the Missouri River is colloquially known as Big Muddy, as America's longest river.
Because it is big and it is muddy.
Correct. Right on the nose there. Okay, guys, let's pivot before we get out of here to the game itself. Let's wrap up where we started talking about the game and look to if people have gotten this far and they've heard all the stuff that we've talked about. Let's finish up with a little bit of what we do best, I think, which is get into the stats and look at kind of what we expect from these teams as they're carrying into here. And so these teams, it would be fair to say that both of these teams have struggled to find a consistent identity, which probably has accompanied the fact that both teams have struggled and been on a bit of a roller coaster as far as unable to string together wins. SKC, we had come to know Vermes ball is to possess the ball, to have some quick passes and leverage creation of space via passing. Their possession numbers this year, though, have been as all over the place as St. Louis. In their matches so far, they've had 40, 59, 60, 51, 48, 39, 50, and 41% possessions. St. Louis has had 40, 45, 59, 34, 57, 43, 66, and 38% possessions. So St. Louis, if we're tracking from trends, is on pace to have a greater than 50% possession game just by the sheer fact that we are on an every other game trajectory and have been since the second game. Looking at the specific analysis of how they move the ball up the field, it is indicative of St. Louis being a counterattacking team and SKC being possession, despite the fact that some of these numbers are all over the place. St. Louis is the second lowest sequence time in MLS, the second fewest passes per sequence, and the second quickest in direct speed in how they progress the ball up the field, while Sporting KC is the 18th lowest in sequence time, the 19th fewest passes per sequence, and the 13th quickest in direct speed. So basically, they're willing and able to push the ball in transition, but they desire to build out of the back. No matter what formation they run, 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, I think they're going to play the ball out of the back, and they're going to try to move the ball up the field methodically, leveraging short passes between the lines that look to pull players out of position. We saw this against St. Louis, where Alan Polito was just torching our middle defensive third when they were making these short passes and playing themselves off the ball very well to create some of these runs. Justin, do you see this as a game that SKC is going to force St. Louis into possession?
Yeah, I think they almost. It's hard because I keep thinking back to the circumstances around the game last year and how it was like almost forced that because St. Louis had to get a goal, that it was almost forced that, okay, you give them possession and hope for the best. But if you want a little bit more flow out of this game, especially since KC are coming in to this match on the worst form of the two squads.
Yep.
I think both teams will just try to play their game. Carnell's kind of talked about it too, where you're kind of more focused on like playing your style as opposed to playing against someone else's. Now, who's going to be more effective in that? I think bears the question on who has possession the amount of times, but I think you'll see both teams try to kind of assert their dominance in that way.
Santi, when it comes to pressing and how we can expect teams to play defensively against whether it's possession or trying to counterattack, St. Louis comes into this the fifth lowest in our PPDA stat, passes per defensive action, where the lower your number, the lower the amount of passes before you make a defensive move on the ball. SKC is fourth highest. So you could read easily into this that Sporting KC overall is not a high pressing team. They allow you to play the ball, pass it around before they make their initial move. They also have the 11th fewest high turnovers forced, while St. Louis is tied for first in high turnovers. So to Justin's point, does this really speak to how St. Louis may be they may try to attack SKC, and SKC is going to use their own style of playing the ball around to beat that press? And it really comes down to both of these styles are kind of complementary to each other, and it really depends ultimately on who is more efficient in implementing their style.
Yeah, definitely contrasting styles, and I agree with Justin. I think St. Louis is not going to change. It's going to be truthful to their identity and try to impose their style. One thing, another stat I found from Sporting KC, and you mentioned they're very methodical about the way they build up, but at the same time, this year they lead MLS in successful long balls, 188, 25 more than any team, and we saw last year that some teams were effective about breaking St. Louis's press with long balls. So something to keep an eye on, even though Sporting KC has that methodical approach. They can also use the long ball to surprise St. Louis and break the lines.
So let's wrap it up with some players to watch. The Sporting KC roster is by and large the same as it was last year. We know a lot of these players: Johnny Russell, Daniel Shallowy, Alan Polito, Mike, our friend from KC, the KC Soccer Journal, is calling out two players in particular. Eric Tommy, who we've seen, he had a brace the other week. I mean, he has been the stalwart in their midfield. He stepped into a full-time playmaker role. It was basically him and Gotti Kinda last year, whether it was on the wing or in the midfield. But he's going to be the player that SKC's build-up works through. So Eric Tommy is going to be the key, I think, to how just about everything rolls through them. And beyond him, you have Danny Rosero. So Mike called out Danny Rosero in their back line. Center back has become a large presence for KC. He's big on set pieces, big threat as an attacker on set pieces, just like Tim Parker is. He has 2 goals off of those this year. And he does seem to have a penchant to switch off at times, which may be why SKC has conceded as much as they have in the second half. So, a little cold water being thrown on, or a dose of reality, more or less, on what Danny Rosero can bring. If you had to pick a point of worry or just a focus, whether it's a player, a position on the field for City fans to watch in what SKC does, who or where would it be, Justin?
The Rosero shout is nice because St. Louis have kind of struggled defending set pieces at times this year. So,
Yep.
like, that big target could have a pretty big impact. I would also say Jake Davis. He's had a really strong start to the season and looks to be kind of taking that next step forward. So that's another player, especially with those out wide matchups being as important as they're going to be.
In fact, from assists, team leaders, Jake Davis is tied for the lead for SKC in assists with 2, just like Thomas Totland is for St. Louis. So you can see where they want to be moving the ball through and where they've been effective at doing that. So Santi, looking at a specific position or a specific player, what are you most interested in from this SKC side?
I am interested in the Daniel Shallowy against Thomas Totland battle on that left side.
It's a good shout.
And Daniel Shalhoub was also another player that scored at least a couple of times again. Yeah, 2 times in the playoffs last year. So, and he hasn't started the season like scoring or contributing a lot, but he has shown against St. Louis that he's an important player for Sporting KC. So that's another key battle, at least for me.
All right, parting words. Justin, you got anything left for us before we get out of here?
No, I'm excited for this match. I think, seeing how things kick off in year 2. Like last year, you could say like the rivalry is sizzling a little bit. It's not quite there yet. So some good matchups this year to hopefully kind of push it over the line.
Santi, anything before you actually call this one on Saturday?
I'm just looking forward to it. And yeah, I know, like Carnell, he says, yeah, for us it's another game, but yeah, just want to see this rivalry growing, and at least on the fan side, it has been great, and all the back and forth between St. Louis and KC. And I know, like for example, I was talking to even he mentioned it today. Thomas Ostrak, he said, "Oh, I want revenge." I still remember last year, so it's good to see some players fired up, even though the approach is like treat it as another game. We will see some fireworks on the field, and just looking forward to that.
I think we're going to see some physicality on the field despite these new rule changes being implemented. And that's my big thing to watch also. I've mentioned a bunch of things. We've talked about a bunch of things, individual matchups, but the rule changes are really going to be interesting to watch, not just in this game, but across the league in how they're initially implemented and what we can learn from. So it's likely we're going to be talking about a lot of these rule changes on Flavor Fallout that Santi and I are going to bring on Sunday. But I will just leave with, Santi, you gave a tease on it, what just Tomas Ostrak said when he talked to the media on Thursday, which is, me personally, I want revenge. Everyone is mentally prepared, and we know it's going to be tough. We're going to be positive and believe, and we can pick up some points from Kansas. That's the most important. All of this aside, that's what it boils down to. So we're going to leave it at that. For Santiago Beltran, for Justin Horniker, for Stuart Holtgren, my name is Matt Baker. Thank you for joining us on Flyover Footy. We really appreciate you tuning in, whether it's to the live stream or to our podcast. If you haven't already, subscribe to both. We've got a YouTube that we throw things out on all the time now, including our third midweek show that we have. If you are not already subscribed to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever, leave us a review, 5-star rating. Everything helps a whole lot. We appreciate it all, and we love doing this so much. Guys, thanks for joining me. And for Flyover Footy, we are out of here, and we'll talk to you later. Go St. Louis against SKC.